Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar on the 2021 update of the Federal Highway Administration's Proven Safety Countermeasure Initiative. On behalf of the Federal Highway Administration and our safety program, I thank you for your time and attention today. My name is Philip Bobbitz. I'm a safety engineer with the Federal Highway Administration Office of Safety, and I'm really happy that you've taken the time out of your day to join us. We're expecting a fantastic turnout with nearly 5,000 people registered for today's webinar, which is incredible. It's very encouraging for us to see such tremendous interest in the topic, and it's a great opportunity for all of us in the transportation industry, given recent data and trends related to highway fatalities, to share some tools and ideas with you on what you could potentially do with some proven effective countermeasures and how you can look at them and consider them into your work. And in fact, we're going to present to you 9 new proven safety countermeasures today, but also remind you of others that have been part of the program for a number of years, all with the goal of improving safety for all users and on all roads. A few housekeeping items before we get started. With regards to the webinar platform, this is a Microsoft Teams live web event. This probably looks a little different for those of you that are used to the standard Teams meeting. As an attendee, functionality is limited, so you won't be able to turn on your video or microphone or interact or participate during the session. However, and it may vary depending on the version of Teams you have installed on your device or machine, you will have access to the Q&A or questions and answers tab within the event interface. This should appear, and at least it's showing on my screen, at the top toolbar as an icon with 2 overlapping chat bubbles with a question mark. So as we go through the webinar today, we encourage you to post any questions you may have in that Q&A tab. Recognizing the size of our audience, our team is going to do the best we can to address those as they come in, but we've also carved out some time at the end of the session to go through a facilitated or moderated Q&A session. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted along with the transcript to the Proven Safety Countermeasures webpage. And with that, I'd like to just begin by quickly running through the agenda for today's webinar. We're going to start with some remarks from FHWA leadership. We'll provide a little bit of background on the history of the Proven Safety Countermeasure Initiative, go through the process we went through to update it and identify new proven safety countermeasures. We have a team of subject matter experts across the Office of Safety and the Resource Center that are going to walk us through the 9 new proven safety countermeasures. We've got a few next steps and resources to share with you, and then we have again, time carved out at the end for a facilitated Q&A session. And so with that, it's my pleasure, and I'm very pleased to introduce and give the virtual stage to Ms. Stephanie Pollock, our Acting Administrator at Federal Highway Administration, for some opening remarks. Stephanie.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who's joining us today. An estimated 20,160 people died in motor vehicle crashes in the first 6 months of 2021, representing an 18% increase over 2020. This is the largest 6-month increase ever recorded in the history of NHTSA's Fatality Analysis Reporting System, or FARS. These often preventable deaths in turn affected tens of thousands of others, because those numbers represent not just statistics, but human beings who were mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends and work colleagues and neighbors. Yesterday was the World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. In a video posted by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, he rejected the often heard excuse that deaths from crashes are an inevitable cost of living in the 21st century, noting that Canada's fatality rate is half of ours, and Europe's is 1/4 that of the United States. The video concluded with Secretary Buttigieg reminding all of us that, quote, a single preventable death is a tragedy. Tens of thousands of them a year is a national crisis, one that demands not just our remembrance, but our urgent action. Clearly, the urgent action that this crisis demands of us requires a multifaceted safe systems approach. Today's webinar focuses on just one piece of that approach: building safer roads using Federal Highway's newest proven safety countermeasures. You know, as I do, that we can do better and make roads safer for all users. We're delighted that 5,000 people registered for today's webinar to learn more about what can be done to make our streets safer. It is our hope at Federal Highway that the community of engineers and professionals who design our streets, not just safety projects, but all of our streets, are ready to do something different because we've realized that what we're doing isn't working. That's where Federal Highway's Proven Safety Countermeasures come in. Widespread use of proven safety countermeasures can offer significant, measurable impacts as part of any agency's approach to improving safety and preventing crashes and deaths. These countermeasures are designed for all road users and all kinds of roads, from rural to urban, from high-volume freeways to less traveled two-lane state and county roads, from signalized crossings to horizontal curves and everything in between. This menu of treatments and strategies provide options for immediate action, options that should be considered and in many cases incorporated into many of the projects rebuilding our streets that are underway, and many more that will be launched with the new resources made available last week when President Biden signed the bipartisan infrastructure law. Federal Highway's goal is not just to educate you and others about these proven safety countermeasures, but to accelerate their use throughout our cities, states, and country, because they can only save lives if they are actually used on our streets. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll join our broader efforts to build a transportation system that allows everyone to go where they need and then safely get back home to their loved ones.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for your leadership, your support for this update. You've been a true ambassador for us in safety and a champion for this effort, and we really appreciate your remarks and taking the time to join us here today.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to introduce Mike Griffith. He is the Director of the Office of Safety Technologies within Federal Highway's Office of Safety for some additional remarks, and he's going to get us started with the history of the Proven Safety Countermeasure Initiative. Mike.
Great. Okay, thank you, Phil. And thank you very much, Deputy Administrator Pollock. We really appreciate your outstanding leadership of our overall safety programs and also your real strong interest in advancing these proven safety countermeasures. So I've been involved with each round of the proven safety countermeasures. We kicked off this initiative back in 2008, and we've had two updates prior to the one that we just did. So we're actually on our fourth update. And prior to this update, we had 20 countermeasures, and now we're up to 28. It's really important that I explain to you what the selection criteria is, because I know we get a lot of questions about what ends up on our list of proven safety countermeasures. One, you have to be proven effective. We're very much a science-based organization, and we look very closely at the literature to look at what the safety research is showing in terms of how effective these countermeasures. We're particularly interested in what impact these countermeasures have on fatalities and serious injuries. And so we have our crash modification factor clearinghouse as a major resource that we use. And then we also look at other sources to look at what's the effectiveness of these various countermeasures. We also look at what countermeasures haven't received wide-scale deployment. There are a lot of different countermeasures in the toolboxes of practitioners. In certain countermeasures, we notice that they really haven't scaled up yet to the national level. We see pockets of them being used across the country, but we're trying to give some national visibility and leadership to countermeasures that are proven effective but really haven't been used to the extent we'd like to see. We also want to make sure it's clear that we're not saying just use these countermeasures. There are other countermeasures that are out there that are just as effective, but they're probably further along in terms of deployment in most cases. We also have some cross-cutting strategies. They're not necessarily highway design or traffic control elements, such as local road safety plans and road safety audits that were part of previous rounds of the countermeasures. We thought it was important not just to look at those countermeasures that you install out there on the road, but also look at strategies that can be very helpful in making a difference when it comes to safety. I know later in the presentation, we're going to talk to you about what guidance and technical assistance that we can provide. We have a lot of different resources that you can take advantage of to make sure you're successful in implementing these countermeasures. In previous rounds, we have tracked implementation progress, and that's something we're going to take a look at with the new ones that we're going to be talking about here today. With that, Phil, I am going to turn it back to you. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you, Mike, and thank you for kind of getting us started with the history of the initiative. I know it's been very beneficial to have you involved, considering your involvement in each round and iteration of the initiative since its initial release, and appreciate all of your leadership support along the way with this update. And so as you look at the existing set of PSCs and fast forward to include our new PSCs, you see many consistent themes that emphasize our priorities. And starting with complete streets, the PSCs can be used and form the foundation of creating an environment that is safe for all road users. Over half of our PSCs include strategies and tools that can support agencies when designing, accommodating, and operating streets that enable safe use, but also support mobility for all users. We have the safe system approach, and hopefully many of you have heard of or are aware of the safe system approach. If not, I encourage you to visit our webpage. We've developed a number of resources, but very high level, it aims to eliminate fatal and serious injuries for all road users, and does so through a holistic view of the road system by first anticipating human mistakes, and then second, trying to keep the impact energy on the human body at tolerable levels. We, Federal Highway, are committed to this approach, and the PSCs align with the safe system elements and principles of separating users in space and time, managing speeds, managing mass, managing impact force angles, increasing attentiveness for road users of the surrounding roadway environment, and then reducing complexity of the design and of the operation of our transportation system. We have speed management. We have a lot of troubling trends with speeding, especially during the pandemic. Safer speeds is a key part of addressing those fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. And many of the PSCs can support agency efforts to effectively accomplish the goal of reducing those speeding related fatalities and serious injuries. You'll see with our new PSCs, we have enough standalone speed management PSCs to warrant their own designated category or grouping of countermeasures. But also too, we have a number of other PSCs in other focus areas that can support speed management. We have equity. PSCs can be implemented to improve multimodal safety and accessibility to ensure equity. Many of the PSCs can be applied in a variety of contexts, including urban streets and rural roads. And then we have climate. Many of the PSCs support the climate priority by encouraging the consideration of infrastructure for vulnerable users, which can reduce our carbon footprint while ensuring Americans have access to clean transportation options and can more easily connect to public transit. So here on the screen, we have the 20 existing proven safety countermeasures, and the intent is not to go through each one of these. The focus of today's webinar is definitely on our 9 new PSCs, but we do want to remind you, if you haven't visited our webpage, take a look. We have a diverse set of existing countermeasures that align really well and address a lot of different focus areas, such as roadway departure, intersection, pedestrian and bicyclists, speed management. And then there's a number of cross-cutting strategies that address multiple focus areas. And so I'll get into this a bit in more detail later, but our project also included updates to these existing PSCs. And so one of them specifically, US Limits 2, went through much more substantial updates and has been renamed, which you'll see shortly. Because of these extensive updates, we are labeling that one as a new PSC. So in essence, we're replacing one of the existing 20 with a new PSC. So this should make more sense later when we get to the slide. With the new PSCs, you'll see the total that we have with our additions brings the total number to 28 PSCs. And so we kicked off a project last fall to update the initiative for the 4th time. This is probably our most comprehensive update to date. It includes the identification and addition of new proven safety countermeasures, updates to our existing countermeasures, and then the development of resources to assist with implementation. So fact sheets, handouts, a social media campaign, and then marketing the update through webinars and a social media campaign. The first task was to have the contractor, which we did have support of for the project, develop a literature review. And so this was intended to be a comprehensive review of the universe of materials, research, studies, publication, to identify potential proven safety countermeasures with justification and supporting information as to why they should be designated as a proven safety countermeasure. So after working with an internal work group, which I'll get into that process next, and identifying those new PSCs, our contractor got into developing those resources. So one-page handouts are fact sheets for the new PSCs, updating the existing handouts. We've developed and updated our web pages. And then we're getting into that marketing or rollout of the update through these rollout webinars and a social media campaign. But also too, our contract included the development of 2 short videos. So one of them is an overview video, and the other will be on one of our new PSCs. So I just wanted to share a 30,000-foot view of the process we went through to update the initiative and identify and select those new PSCs. So we recognized early on we could not do this in a vacuum. So we established a cross-office work group with representation across not only the Office of Safety, but our resource center, our Turner Fairbanks arm of the agency, which represents the research focus. We had representation from other program offices, division offices, really to make sure we had a diverse set of and team to review, vet, identify the new PSCs, and review all the materials that we developed as part of this effort. And that team has definitely increased in size over time, just to make sure we pulled in that expertise necessary to make sure our materials were reflective of the latest and greatest research and considerations. So before the project started, we had a brainstorming session with that work group to generate ideas that were shared with the contractor, and to generate ideas being those countermeasures that could perhaps be included in that literature review. So our contractor took that input, conducted an additional literature review, and identified 30 potential countermeasures with justification and supporting information as to why they should be designated as a proven safety countermeasure. So our work group took that information in, strongly considered the potential countermeasures, crash reduction value, the star quality rating, if the crash reduction was pulled from the crash modification factors clearinghouse. We focused in on those highly reliable or highly confident crash modification factors to validate the safety effectiveness. We also considered how well the countermeasures align with those priorities, the different trends that were noted. And we had several meetings over a few weeks, a lot of good, healthy debate about the countermeasures. We went through several iterations of the literature review to address various comments and feedback on different areas and the supporting information for the potential countermeasures. And then a few more exercises to narrow down and focus the discussion. And ultimately, we were able to reach consensus on what those new PSCs would be. And so without further ado, based on our work group efforts, these are our new proven safety countermeasures. So we have rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RFBs, lighting, crosswalk visibility enhancements, pavement friction management, which includes continuous pavement friction measurement and high friction surface treatments, wider edge lines, bicycle lanes, variable speed limits, speed safety cameras, and appropriate speed limits for all road users. And so you can see the diversity here, whether it be a rural or urban application, a state DOT, a local agency, or tribal agency. There's something here for everyone to add to their toolbox. But also, too, they align really well with the trends we're seeing specific to pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities, speeding. They can support a safe system approach. They complement a complete streets vision. And there's opportunities to more equitably consider implementation of these countermeasures. And all of that was really important as we went through that process of vetting, considering the new proven safety countermeasures to make sure we had that, maintain a diversity with the countermeasure, the initiative really, and making sure they were relevant to the many priorities of DOT. And so as I noted a few slides ago, and Anisha will get into more detail once we get to the overview of the speed management PSCs, the appropriate speed limits for all road users PSC will replace US limits 2. And so US limits 2, we kind of step back, broaden that countermeasure to kind of look at all the different approaches, applications, considerations that go into setting and considering speed limits. So again, Anisha will go into more detail with that, but that replacing US limits 2 and these other additions bring us to a total of 28 proven safety countermeasures. And so as we go through the slides and reference the handouts or the fact sheets, the safety effectiveness or the crash reductions noted are tailored to the PSC. So there was specific focus on fatalities and serious injuries when supported by the data. And what I mean by that is that we focused on utilizing and referencing high quality, highly reliable crash modification factors for fatality and serious injury reductions when the data was available in the crash modification factors clearinghouse or the research supporting that crash reduction. We provided additional context to the types of crashes or other factors such as functional classification, area type, time of day, to highlight those most beneficial applications of the PSCs. Again, we're supported by the data. And as Mike noted, we definitely don't want to come across that we're promoting these in every situation or these will address or answer every safety problem or issue you may encounter, but we tried to focus in on those most beneficial applications of the countermeasures and that proven effective criteria that Mike noted. So we're going to have several technical leads and subject matter experts walk through each of these proven safety countermeasures. And we're actually going to start with Peter Unn, a safety engineer with the Resource Center Safety and Design team, who's going to walk us through rectangular rapid flashing beacons and crosswalk visibility enhancements. Peter.
Thanks, Phil. And the RFB. So let's go to the next slide. Many of you have probably seen these out there because they have been very popular, probably because they are proven. And so just like my background, I'm sort of blending in. Sometimes we need more than just marked crosswalks, right? You need to increase your conspicuity. And so the RFB does just that with the existing signs out there, the W11-2. You can actually supplement those, the pedestrian, the school, or the trail crossing post-mounted warning signs with an RFB. And what it does is it just makes you a lot more visible because sometimes you do need more than just a marked crosswalk, and we'll get to that. They've been very effective, but these really help. And they're one of the benefits, the beauties of the RFB is that you can either do solar powered or hardwired. And so with the solar power, reduces the cost, can put them out in a lot more locations, especially in rural applications where you don't have maybe the hardwiring put in. So next slide. With regards to, these can be put at uncontrolled marked crosswalks, whether at intersections or mid-block crossings. And here we do have table 1 of the guide for improving pedestrian safety at uncontrolled crossing locations. These are very effective. As far as crash reduction factor, 47%, but as far as yielding rates, up to 98%. But we recommend that you go to this table 1 to really look at the appropriate location. We've got the ADTs, the speeds, and the number of lanes as far as where the appropriate application, sort of the best spots where these are. And we do recommend typically that these are in the 35 to 40, under 40 mile per hour is sort of the sweet spot. Next slide. So one of the beauties of these is that they do get your attention, and you do need to have 2 at the actual crosswalk location. So at every crosswalk, you'll have one on the right, one on the left, and these are actually great on the multi-lane roads. But once again, watching where the speeds and the ADTs. But if you're using them on a divided highway, you need to have them on both sides. And if you have a median, you can put those in the median as well. What I really love about these is the flash period is initiated each and every time a pedestrian is detected. So as soon as that pedestrian activates that button, these things go on. Drivers, they draw the attention, drivers slow down. Speed is a huge issue for pedestrians, and crossing the road. Majority of pedestrians get killed or are seriously injured when they're crossing the road. So great proven device. You'll see a lot more of these, and hopefully get more out there in the next as we move on. Next slide, please. So, it all starts with crosswalks, and you can actually, instead of the minimal, transverse lines or parallel lines, you can actually improve crosswalks with higher visibly marked crosswalks, but also lighting and other additional signage. So if you want to go to the next slide, this is sort of the basis for with pedestrian crossings, and these are very low cost. With regards to the RFB, you're looking at the 12 to 16,000 range. With crosswalk visibility enhancements, you can look in the 100 to 200 with the certain signs. So they are a lot more lower cost. You can use these at mid-block and uncontrolled crossing locations as well at intersections. Now, these have a crash reduction factor of between 23 and 48% in that we do have multiple crosswalk treatments, high visibility marked crosswalks as mentioned, signs, curb extensions, and lighting. These all fall under the enhancements. And once again, going back to table 1 with regards to what's the appropriate context to where it's best utilized. Next slide. And then the higher visibly marked crosswalks, just like I mentioned that you really want to draw the attention to drivers because crosswalks are for pedestrians to know where they should cross, but also for drivers. So definitely consider these at mid-block crossings. In a majority of pedestrians, there's a lot of people who are crossing mid-blocks where they're getting hit, and so installing new mid-block crossings with higher visibility crosswalks is a very good start. There's different types of materials you can use, whether inlay or thermoplastic, paint and brick, a lot of different things, but going with the higher visibility, continental, or sometimes called piano keys where they're offset a little bit. But these do also have a crash reduction factor of injuries going down by about 40%. And then we've got improved intersection lighting with regards to crosswalks as well, 42%, sort of a win-win between pedestrians and vehicles, but you're really lighting because the majority, a good percentage, over 50% of pedestrian crashes happen during the dark, at nighttime or in dark conditions. Next slide. And then we do, as far as signing, in addition to just your W11.2, you can have your advanced yield or stop signage and markings where you're stopping vehicles about 20 to 50 feet, sort of the sweet spot is the 30 feet in advance of the crosswalk. Really helps with regards to the multi-threat situation to open up those sight triangles. And then the in-street pedestrian sign as well, where in a lot of sort of the lower speed locations, but it reminds drivers that it is the law, and depending on the state, whether to yield or to stop to pedestrians. Works great with education campaigns, but just having that reminder there that the law is that you are supposed to yield or stop to pedestrians, at crosswalks, whether marked or unmarked. So there's this whole range, definitely to improve the pedestrian crossings. And so next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Brooks Truby in the Resource Center, and she's going to talk about bicycle lanes.
Thank you, Peter. Go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. Most fatal and serious injury bicyclist crashes occur at non-intersection locations, including nearly 1/3 of bicyclists who die from crashes involving overtaking motorists. To improve the safety for bicyclists, agencies can consider including bicycle lanes, which are a dedicated facility for the use of bicyclists along the roadway adjacent to motorized vehicles. Bicycle lanes can be included on new roadways, or they can be created on existing roadways by reallocating travel lane and shoulder widths. In addition to the paint stripe used for a typical bicycle lane, a lateral offset with a painted buffer can help to further separate bicyclists from vehicle traffic and thus improve comfort for those bicyclists. State and local agencies may also consider physical separation of the bicycle lane from motorized traffic lanes through the use of vertical elements like posts, curbs, or vegetation. Based on international experience and implementation in the United States so far, there is potential for further safety benefits associated with separated bicycle lanes, sometimes also referred to as cycle tracks. Separated bicycle lanes align with the safe system approach principle of anticipating human mistakes, where separating users in space can enhance safety for all road users. FHWA is conducting research on separated bicycle lanes, which includes the development of crash modification factors, and this is expected to be completed in 2022 to address the significant interest that we've seen in this topic. Agencies can use various strategies, practices, and processes to enhance their ability to address equity in bicycle planning and design. For example, one agency in Louisiana is using the percentage of students participating in the free or reduced school lunch program as a factor in prioritizing their projects to build facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists. Agencies should reference FHWA's Bikeway Selection Guide for more information on choosing a bikeway design that will best serve all ages and abilities in a given context. Next slide, please. Research indicates that roadways where the travel lane widths are decreased to add a bicycle lane did not experience an increase in injuries or congestion. This applies to all crashes on roadways classified as principal arterials with no control of access in urban areas. Some crash reduction factors were developed through FHWA's evaluation of low-cost safety improvements pool fund study. This evaluation found that adding a bicycle lane by reducing lane and shoulder widths resulted in a 57% reduction of total crashes, not just bicycle crashes, on a 4-lane undivided collector or local road, and resulting in a 30% reduction in total crashes on a 2-lane undivided collector or local road. With that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. She's an engineer with the Office of Safety, Kat Satterfield, who will tell us about wider edge lines.
Thanks, Brooke. Kate Satterfield here. Thank you. Along roadways with edge lines installed, most agencies have traditionally used a 4-inch wide pavement marking, but here we're referring to wider 6-inch lines used to heighten the visibility of that pavement marking and the edge of the roadway. Wider edge lines increase drivers' perception of the edge of the travel lane and can provide a safety benefit to all facility types, be it freeways, multi-lane, or 2-lane highways. Wider edge lines are most effective in reducing crashes on rural 2-lane highways, and especially for single vehicle crashes. So wider edge lines are considered low cost because if you think about it, the additional cost is only in the materials. So a lot of the cost going into the installation is the labor of getting out there, but the material itself is the only thing that's extra when you switch from 4-inch to 6 inches. It's likely agencies will find there's a lower life cycle cost when using a durable marking material such as thermoplastic. So it's always good to think of that in terms of the not just your initial outlay, but the life cycle costs over the life of that pavement marking. For automated vehicles, 6-inch edge lines may provide easier detection and tracking for lane departure warning and for lane keeping assistance. I saw a question in the chat pod about whether wider edge lines will be incorporated into the next version of the MUTCD. And those changes to the MUTCD always go through a rulemaking process that's separate from this initiative. There is proposed language in the notice of proposed amendment that was put out. And I'm not going to go into detail about what that says, but it's much broader than this proven safety initiative. So we're going to stay focused on this. When there were comments to that rulemaking that are being reviewed, and when a decision is made about what's going to go into the next MUTCD, it will be announced to the Federal Register as a final rule. So back to this, as agencies consider implementing these wider edge lines, we recommend a systemic approach. And so that means you would want to base your installation not necessarily on a specific system of where you would want to place them, but look at what are the crash risk factors, and specifically roadway departure crash risk factors. So some of those might include things like narrow pavement or narrow shoulders, presence of curves, a history of nighttime crashes, etc. Next slide, please. Wider edge lines can reduce crashes up to 37% for fatal and injury crashes on rural 2-lane roads, and up to 22% for fatal and serious injury crashes on rural freeways. So very effective for a small cost. So wider edge lines can also have a benefit cost ratio of 25:1 for fatal and serious injury crashes on 2-lane rural roads. Now, Joe Chung, a safety engineer with the Office of Safety Technologies, will walk us through lighting and friction management.
Thank you, Kate. Phil, go ahead and advance the slide. For lighting, We know that lighting enhances our ability to see what's ahead, whether when we're driving, walking on sidewalk along the roadways, or crossing the streets. Nighttime fatality rate is 3 times the daytime rate, even though only 25% of vehicle miles traveled occur at night. At nighttime, vehicles travel at high speed may not have the ability to stop once a hazard or change in the road alignment ahead becomes visible by the headlights. Similarly, pedestrians cannot detect hazards along the walking path at night or be seen by motorists when trying to cross the street. By applying continuously along segments and at spot locations such as intersections and pedestrian crossings, lighting significantly improves the overall visibility, increases sight distance, and makes roadside obstacles more noticeable to the driver, and will minimize nighttime crashes. Now, we all use different form of LED lighting fixture in our home because it is more energy efficient and appears to be brighter. Now, the LED lighting technology also affect the roadway lighting as well. LED lighting provide far superior precise control in reducing excessive light affecting the nighttime sky glow and also minimize spillage over to the adjacent properties. It also allows for adaptive lighting control to customize the light level according to the needs and for a specific time period at night. In addition to traffic safety, adequate roadway lighting often serves the purpose of safeguarding personal safety for pedestrians, wheelchair and other mobility devices, bicyclists, and transit users as they travel along and cross the roadways. Agency can equitably engage with underserved communities to determine where and how new and improved lighting can most benefit the community by considering their priorities, including eliminating crash disparities, connecting to essential neighborhood services, and improving active transportation routes and promote personal safety. Next slide, please. Research shows that applying lighting at intersections can reduce crashes up to 42% for nighttime injury pedestrian crashes at intersections and 38% for nighttime crashes at rural and urban intersections. For road segments, agency can consider continuous lighting on both rural and urban highways, including freeways. Research showed that lighting can reduce crashes up to 28% for nighttime injury crashes on rural and urban highways. As part of this effort, FHWA is developing a 3 to 5 minute video on lighting that will feature a case study from Florida DOT. And additionally, FHWA anticipates publishing a pedestrian lighting user guide later this year or early next year. Next slide, please. So pavement friction. Go ahead and advance to the next slide also, Phil. Friction provided by a roadway surface affects how vehicles interact with the roadway, including the frequency of crashes, and measuring, monitoring, and maintaining pavement friction, especially at horizontal curved road segments with small radius, lack of super elevation, and at locations where vehicles are frequently turning slowly and stopping, which is fairly typical at intersections, can prevent many roadway departure, intersections, and pedestrian-related crashes. This proven safety countermeasures include continuous pavement friction measurement. In short, we refer that to CPFM, and high friction surface treatment, HFST. Continuous friction measurement improves an agency's ability to measure friction through intersections and around curves and provide a more comprehensive picture of how friction varies for different parts of the road segment. Traditional friction measurement devices like the lock wheel skid trailer cannot safely and accurately collect such data, especially in curves or intersections where the pavement polishes more quickly, and having adequate friction at these locations are so much more critical because the log wheel skid trailer can only take spot measurement at increments of around 60 feet and cannot be performed in smaller increment. Agency will assume that the same friction over a mile or more cannot assess friction in between measurement. So we sometimes refer that as sampling. Additionally, using log wheel skid trailer require traffic control and could cause disruption to traffic operation and resulting in secondary crashes. So to get more accurate pavement friction data, agency used CPFM technology, which can operate at highway speed and provide both network and segment level data. CPFM is an established and proven approach that has been used for several decades now in other countries, and that could revolutionize the role of pavement friction in framing our understanding and management of the safety performance of our nation's roadway. CPFM equipment is able to measure pavement friction continuously without stopping through tangent, curves, and intersections at speed as high as 50 miles per hour. And this data can then be post-processed in the office and can get down to a very small increment as small as 1 foot. Practitioner can analyze the friction, the crash, and roadway data to better understand and predict where friction-related crashes will occur to better target location and more effectively put in safety countermeasures such as high friction surface treatment. Next slide. Well, high friction surface treatment was one of FHWA Everyday Count 2 safety initiative. It is an application of very high quality aggregate, typically calcined bauxite, that are polished and abrasion resistant and applied to the pavement using a polymer binder to restore and enhance pavement friction at existing or potentially high crash areas associated with friction demand issue. It is highly effective in reducing hydroplaning on wet surface. As most of you are familiar with HFST, it was part of the existing proven safety countermeasures under the heading of enhanced delineation and pavement friction for horizontal curves. However, when added to the list of proven safety countermeasures a few years back, it was limited to horizontal curve application only. However, since then, we have a lot more experience with HFST in other applications. So creating a standalone proven safety countermeasures makes sense and allow us to be more inclusive of the other non-curve location where friction demand is driven by the ability to perform short-term maneuver such as sudden braking, lane changes, and minor changes in direction within a lane. And it's evident that in our everyday driving on a highway system, we encounter interchange ramp, intersection approaches, and approach to crosswalk as well. So CPFM and HFST can certainly enhance the safety aspect of those locations. Next slide, please. As far as effectiveness, HFST can reduce crashes up to 63% for injury crashes at ramps, 48% for injury crashes at horizontal curves, wet crashes 83%, and 20% for total crash at intersection. That completes my presentation. Now I want to turn over the time to my colleague, Anissa Mukherjee. She is a safety specialist with safety operation team at headquarters. She will be presenting various speed limit. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I'm Onisha, and I'll be leading you through the next set of PSCs focused on speed management, starting with variable speed limits. Next slide. Our variable speed limits are speed limits that change based on different conditions. VSLs improve traffic safety and flow by reducing speed variance. VSLs can also improve driver expectation in advance of slowdowns and lane closures. VSLs may be implemented to alleviate congestion, manage speeds during traffic events such as incidents or work zones, and reduce speeds during inclement weather. Based on available research, VSLs are most effective when implemented on urban and rural freeways and arterials with speed limits greater than 40 miles per hour. VSLs reduce speeds so that human injury tolerances are accommodated by improving visibility, providing additional time for drivers to stop, and reducing impact forces. In this way, VSLs are integral to the safe speeds element of the safe system approach. Next slide. As far as effectiveness, VSLs can reduce crashes on freeways by up to 34% for total crashes, 65% for rear-end crashes, and 51% for fatal and injury crashes. Next slide. So our next NewPSC is speed safety cameras, or SSCs. Quite a number of abbreviations there. Next slide. SSCs use speed measurement devices to detect speeding and capture photographic or video evidence of vehicles violating a set speed threshold. Agencies can use speed safety cameras as an effective and reliable technology to supplement more traditional methods of enforcement, along with engineering and education, to alter the social norms of speeding and effect much needed progress in reducing speeds. Agencies should definitely conduct a network analysis of speeding-related crashes to identify locations to implement SSCs. Next slide. SSCs can be deployed as a fixed unit, which is a single stationary camera targeting one location, or a point-to-point or P2P unit, which has multiple cameras to capture average speed over a certain distance, or a mobile unit, which is a portable camera, generally in a vehicle or trailer. When implementing SSCs, agencies should consider the following. SSCs should always be planned with community input and equity impacts in mind. With proper controls in place, SSCs can offer fair and equitable enforcement of speeding, regardless of driver age, race, gender, or socioeconomic status. Remember, public trust is very vital to the success of any SSC program. Always use a mix of, if possible, a mix of overt, that is highly visible, and covert, that is hidden enforcement, to encourage drivers to comply with speed limits everywhere. Conduct a legal and policy review to check if SSCs are authorized within your jurisdiction. And finally, consult USDOT's SSC guidelines. This guide was published in 2008 and is currently undergoing an update. Next slide. So how effective are speed safety cameras? Fixed point units can reduce crashes on urban principal arterials by up to 54% for all crashes and 47% for injury crashes. And in New York City, they were found to reduce speeding by up to 63% during school hours. Point-to-point units, on the other hand, can reduce crashes on urban freeways, expressways, and principal arterials by up to 37% for fatal and injury crashes. Mobile units can reduce crashes on urban principal arterials by up to 20% for fatal and injury crashes. Next slide. So this brings us to our last PSC, appropriate speed limits for all road users, which, as Phil mentioned before, will be replacing the existing US Limits 2 PSC. In previous iterations of the PSC initiative, we promoted the use of US Limits 2. However, since then, the state of knowledge and the practice of speed limit setting has sort of evolved. And for us here at Federal Highway, the safe system approach has been part of this evolution. The safe system approach places special emphasis on safe speeds, which is one of its core elements. So even though this is not a brand new PSC, but somewhat of a revision of an existing one, we believe the revisions to be significant enough to warrant a special mention here today. So next slide. In 2019, speeding killed 9,478 people, representing 26% of US highway fatalities. As we all know, we humans are unlikely to survive high-speed crashes. 9 out of 10 pedestrians, if hit by a vehicle traveling around 20 miles per hour, are likely to survive. Well, but only 1 out of 10 pedestrians will likely survive an impact at around 60 miles per hour. Higher vehicle speeds increase not only the severity of a crash, but also its likelihood, because higher speed diminishes the driver's ability to recognize and avoid potential conflicts. Next slide. State and local transportation agencies are generally responsible for setting and enforcing speed limits on roadways under their jurisdictions. They may do so statutorily or non-statutorily. Statutory speed limits are established by legislative action for a particular class of highways with specific design, function, and jurisdictional and/or locational characteristics, while non-statutory speed limits must be based on an engineering study. They should be conducted in accordance with the MUTCD and involve multiple factors and take into account engineering judgment. Federal Highway Administration's methods and practices for setting speed limits and informational report published in 2012 is a good resource for practitioners on this matter. But with this new PSCs, agencies are also being encouraged to use the expert system approach. The expert system approach relies on a knowledge-based decision support process developed by subject matter experts to provide consistent results. Practitioners interested in this approach may use US Limits 2 or the posted speed limit setting procedure and tool developed as part of NCHRP Report 966. Another approach to consider is the SAFE system approach to setting speed limits, which aims to minimize the anticipated impacts of a crash and thereby reduce the risk of death or serious injury for all road users. Based on international experience and implementation here in the United States, the use of 20-mile-per-hour speed zones or speed limits in urban core areas where vulnerable road users share the roadway with motorists may result in further safety benefits. Next slide. When setting a speed limit, agencies should consider a range of factors such as pedestrian and bicyclist activity, land use context, crash history, intersection spacing, roadway functional classification, traffic volume, and observed speeds. Implement self-enforcing roadways, traffic calming, and speed safety cameras in concurrence with speed limit setting. And as far as effectiveness is concerned, traffic fatalities in the city of Seattle decreased 26% after the city implemented comprehensive citywide speed management strategies and countermeasures. This included setting speed limits on all non-arterial streets at 20 miles per hour and at 25 miles per hour for 200 miles of arterial streets. And with that, I will hand it back to Phil.
Okay, thank you, Anisha, and thank you to all of our SMEs for that brief overview on each of the 9 new PSCs. And so now that we did finish that overview, I'd like to transition now to review some of the materials, both new and updated, that we've developed as part of this update. And we're going to start with the web pages. And please note that some of the functionality that I'm going to show as part of this presentation, some of the screenshots, that functionality has not quite been enabled on our web pages yet. We do continue to work with our IT to enable that, and we're very hopeful that it should be added very soon. So the web pages received an updated look and branding, but retained the icons and the one-page handouts or content for each of the PSCs. With the initiative now containing 28 countermeasures, the website received new features to better organize the PSCs and to help users find the right solution to their issues. First, the homepage was organized into 5 areas. So we have speed management, roadway departure, intersection, pedestrian and bicyclist, and cross-cutting, with each of the countermeasures listed under those headings. The website will also feature enhanced functionality, including a text search capability and a new filter tool. So this is that functionality I noted, and you can see that Proven Safety Countermeasures toolbox towards the top of the page in that one screenshot that is not currently shown on our public-facing web pages. So that will be, as I noted, hopefully added in soon. And the search tool will allow users to enter or type in keywords and into that search box, and then the website would return the PSCs that contain that keyword. We also have the filter tool. So the filter tool will allow users to obtain a tailored listing of potential proven safety countermeasures for a location of interest. So based off of answers or questions or criteria that a user selects, that user would receive a tailored list of PSCs meeting that same criteria. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into what that filter tool kind of looks like. And so this is a screenshot of the new filter tool and the questions or parameters that can be selected to filter that full list of 28 PSCs. And we thought this was a very important addition to the web pages, with it now containing 28 countermeasures. At first glance, it could be overwhelming as you navigate to the pages, even grouping them by focus area. It's a lot to kind of sort through, and we understand that. So the intention with the tool is to assist practitioners, including those with limited safety background, with more easily identifying solutions that meet their needs. So some of the questions you can see here, the area type, the focus area you're trying to address, traffic volume ranges, targeted crash types, or a problem you're trying to address, such as excessive speeds or driver inattention, no separation of users. After a user selects the options that they're looking for their project or corridor, and you can select as many or as little of these options, or answer as little or as many questions as you need to based off of your project or situation. You hit apply filters button at the bottom of the page, and the list of PSCs will update at the bottom of the page based off of the query and then the answers or selections that you've made. And so this is an example using the selections that were provided from that previous screenshot. You've now gone from 28 countermeasures down to 4 countermeasures, which is a much more manageable list to kind of sort through, something a more tailored list that you can dig into deeper and find out what might be the best fit for your situation. And so from this list, each of those is a clickable link. So if you would click on these, it would take you to that countermeasure specific page where you could get more information, or that there's links included for to an additional resource or a page within our web page to get some more additional information. But again, a more manageable list to kind of sort through as you try to look at and find out what might be the best fit for your project. We've also developed, which were very popular with previous iterations and materials from the initiative, one-page fact sheets or handouts for each of the 9 new PSCs. And so most of the content from our slide deck today was pulled from those one-pagers or handouts. The one-pagers are great for briefing leadership. They're also very beneficial and a very handy resource for practitioners looking to implement a PSC. And although we can't cover every detail in a one-pager, we cover the key nuggets of information. So an overview, very brief overview of what the countermeasure is, the safety effectiveness or crash reductions associated with the most beneficial application of the PSCs, where supported by data and research. And I saw a couple questions coming in related to this. So each crash reduction noted does include a footnote or a reference to the research. In most cases, that's a crash modification factor. So that study is footnoted at the bottom, so you could dig into if you're really looking to get some more information. But we've tried to provide that summary in that left side or kind of sidebar of each handout to again focus in on those most beneficial applications of the countermeasures. And then we also include information on applications and considerations for implementation. So some of the PSCs went through much more substantial updates since it's been years since many of the countermeasure fact sheets or handouts have been updated. One example of this is dedicated left and right turn lanes at intersections. The new fact sheet includes information on the research and application considerations and crash reductions associated with offset turn lanes, because we now have enough research and information that demonstrates and supports their use from a safety perspective. And going forward, it's our intention to keep the countermeasure specific pages, the handouts, as up to date as possible as new research and information becomes available. So instead of waiting 3, 4, 5 years between each major iteration of the initiative, you can visit our web pages to get the latest and greatest fact sheets, and we'll do our best to keep those up to date as those new applications, considerations, or crash reductions become evident. So we've also developed a number of other resources. The overview flyer is shown in the top left of your screen here. It's a one-pager front and back. The front includes an overview of the initiative, and on the back side it contains the full list of 28 proven safety countermeasures. In the middle of your screen, it's a screenshot of the cover of our booklet. The booklet is a compilation of all 28 PSC handouts or fact sheets. It's a really nice, handy desktop reference. The pre-pandemic, these were very popular at our in-person events, but both of these are available for download on our web pages. In the bottom right, you'll see the PSC rollout box. That is currently included on our web page. However, it currently just shows the flyer, the booklet, and the guidance memos. Within the next few weeks, we will also post the webinar recording and the transcript on that page. Also in development are 2 videos. So one is a PSC overview video, which we hope to have finalized and posted by the end of the calendar year. The second is on lighting, and Joe touched on briefly. This will feature Florida DOT as a case study. They have a rather progressive lighting program as far as new locations for lighting go, but also their retrofits, so upgrading high pressure sodium lighting to LED lighting. And so really appreciate their willingness to contribute to that video. And we hope to, within the next few weeks, have that posted on our web pages for viewing. So in conclusion, find the PSCs that fit your situation. We encourage you to consider the proven safety countermeasures as viable options for improving safety on all roads and for all users. The information here and in our other materials, we definitely don't want to suggest or imply that the proven safety countermeasures are the answer to all your problems. There are certainly many other countermeasures available, and they may be a better fit for your situation. So I think we've noted that a few times now, but just want to reiterate that we definitely urge you to consider these for implementation, but recognize there may be other countermeasures available. Use the resources and save lives. The updates to the initiative are intended to provide the most up-to-date research and considerations and provide tools for practitioners, all with the goal of reducing fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. We encourage you to visit the web pages, download the resources we've developed, and also keep an eye out on our web pages for that enhanced functionality. If there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. And all in all, Federal Highway is committed to providing any assistance related to the PSCs and their related safety programs. Reaching our goal of 0 deaths and serious injuries requires all of us to take ownership in safety, and widespread implementation of these PSCs can help accelerate the achievement of those safety goals and enhance safety for all road users. So that wraps us up as far as our presentation goes. We're going to transition now into a Q&A session. I'm going to ask Kevin Elliott from our contractor team to come on and help moderate or facilitate that session. Again, our platform does restrict the ability to ask questions through audio, so we encourage you to input your questions into the Q&A tab of the event interface. I see a lot of questions have come in, or subject matter experts have been hard at work trying to answer a lot of those questions, but now I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, there have been some really good questions. It's been very active in the Q&A. And just so everyone knows, if we aren't able to answer your question audibly in this section, it doesn't mean that you won't get an answer to it. We are keeping track of every question that's been asked. And as quickly as possible, our subject matter experts are typing in their answers live in the Q&A. But we will section these out, and then we do our very best to get answers to everyone. It may not be during this time. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to start with kind of an overall question that came in, and then we'll go through section by section, and I will ask a question and let the particular SME that of course knows that best answer those questions. So I'll kind of field them that way. The first one, Phil, I'm going to pass that one to you. It's kind of a general question about the lit review. The question is, a comprehensive lit review was mentioned and one of the tasks under this project. The wider edge line countermeasure mentions a few of these, and that are studies as sources. And I think you mentioned this, but I want to make sure that everybody knows talk about the lit review a little bit and some of the footnotes that they are in those fact sheets to make sure that everybody knows where to find that information, that background stuff.
Yeah, so again, the literature review was a full, very comprehensive review of all the different research in both the Crash Modification Factors Clearinghouse, publications through TRB, NCHRP, you name it, it was all considered in that literature review. And so our contractor kind of scoured and conducted that. After identifying those countermeasures, that supporting information or those crash reductions were included in there. And again, I think Mike touched on briefly with the criteria we look at for determining which countermeasures to designate as proven safety countermeasures. We focused in on those highly confident, highly reliable crash modification factors. And we do that by looking at the star quality rating assigned to each crash modification factor. So all of the crash modification factors were included in that literature review as part of the supporting information. But when we really started to get into that discussion, trying to identify and select what the new countermeasures would be, we had to kind of raise the bar a little bit and focus in on those higher rated, star quality rated CMFs for consideration. So again, a lot were pulled from the Crash Modification Factors Clearinghouse as we selected them. Some additional research was consulted to make sure we looked at and provided those most beneficial applications of the PSCs. And ultimately, the ones that we included on the fact sheets, the handouts, in our slide deck today, every crash reduction includes a reference to a study or research, again, whether it be from the CMF Clearinghouse. That study is footnoted on each of the fact sheets or handouts. So encourage you, if you're kind of if you're a data nerd, want to kind of dig into the study a little bit further, that study or research is included as a reference to each of the crash reductions noted. So hopefully that addresses the question. I know it's kind of a lot, kind of stepping through the literature review, and ultimately when you're only including a few crash reductions, we had to focus and again raise the bar a little bit to make sure we're highly confident in the research supporting that crash reduction.
Thank you, Phil. The next question is for Peter, and there were a lot of questions about the RFBs as he saw, and Peter answered most of them in there. But one that came in for you, Peter. Has there been any consideration of using RFBs at yield or stop control intersections?
So at the yield and stop, I think what the question is trying to draw attention to maybe people not necessarily yielding, and so we would not put the RFB in those situations. The RFB is for uncontrolled, and so when you have a stop condition, you could use an LED around the border. That is a possibility to draw attention to that stop sign. Now, the other thing about that is that if the stop sign is on the minor street and you don't have a stop condition on the major street, then RFB can be installed there. So, but you would not put an RFB with the stop sign on the same road that the stop sign is on.
Thank you. Peter, one more question for you is, can you repeat the the different options for cost for the RFBs? Yeah, so a couple people mentioned with PHBs as well. So the RFB being in that probably $10,000 to $16,000 range, while the pedestrian hybrid beacon is much higher in the $80,000 to $100,000 range. There are some solar options with the PHB as well, coming down in the $26,000 range. But the cost, something else and that's just for the equipment. Please note that if you're putting in a brand new mid-block crosswalk where you have to add curb ramps, maybe get right away, there's going to be additional costs. So that number there is really just for the equipment itself. And may I recommend also PedSafe? It's if you Google in PedSafe, it's got a lot of our countermeasures, and it does have some national estimates with regards to costs for the different countermeasures that we've talked about. Thank you, Peter. There was a question about lighting at intersections. Let me get to this one real quick. Sorry, I might have slipped there. It was a question for maybe Joe / Peter. I have lost that question, but okay, so I'll tell you what. What about this would be a question for Joe, I think. Joe, what about in-pavement crosswalk lighting? LEDs installed in the pavement that light up the crosswalk from below.
Yeah, there were a couple of questions on that. One of the issue is maintenance of these devices. A lot of jurisdictions have tried to use it, and after a couple of seasons, especially during the winter, freeze and thaw month, they'll find that it actually stopped working. And near where I live, I saw several of them that had them before, and then they end up just not use them anymore. That seems like that's the experience, that this is not something that they can rely on all the time. So instead, they use other traffic control devices to help.
Thank you, Joe. I found that lighting question I mentioned. I think this one's for Peter, but it may bleed over into Joe. But Peter answered it in the Q&A. So, are there any guidelines for when to light mid-block marked crossings?
Yeah, so we would recommend that if you can, at all mid-block crossings, put in lighting. It's not required, but we understand that obviously, there's cost involved, but we recommend that you would always light it. There is a informational report called Informational Report on Lighting Design for Mid-Block Crosswalks. And something that I didn't mention during the presentation is that we do recommend that you put it in front of the crosswalk, the lighting in front of the crosswalk, rather than directly over or behind, because that creates more of a silhouette effect. So the recommendation is to put the lighting in front of the crosswalk. Now, I'll put a link to that report in that response.
Yeah, if I can add to that, yeah, this is a report that was, I think, published back in 2008. It's probably needed an update. However, the information are still fairly accurate. Yeah, so for now, that is probably the best reference that we can refer that to in terms of for mid-block crossing. However, there's kind of like Peter said, there's no warranting or requirement developed for that just yet. However, I think there was a study that have just been concluded by Virginia Tech that actually looked at the effectiveness of mid-block crossing. I think is either in conjunction with Illinois DOT. So maybe that particular finding would shed a little more light on that.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Brooke on on-road bicycle lanes. What was the reduction in severe and fatal injury crashes when adding bicycle lanes?
You're muted, Brooke.
Thank you. It's going to depend on your context. For a 4-lane undivided urban collector or local road, we're seeing a 57% reduction for all road users. And then if you're on a 2-lane road in that same context, it is a 30% reduction for all road users. And those are the two CMFs that we're highlighting because they're very reliable CMFs. There's a great number of other CMFs that you may find in the Crash Modification Clearinghouse. And I would advise, if you're looking at any of those, take a look at the underlying research to see, and the star rating as well, to see the context in which that research was applied, and what nuances there may be. Because one thing I will caution you when you're looking at crash modification factors for bicycle travel is that we're talking about a total number of crashes, but if you build a facility and it's increasing ridership, you might see an increase in crashes, but you've also had a much greater increase in potential exposure because more people are actually using the facility. And while we don't want to see any increase in crashes, make sure you know what the data and the numbers are telling you.
Very good, thank you. Excuse me. This next question is for Kate Satterfield on wider edge lines. In the study for the wider edge lines, was the use of recessed pavement markings included in that study?
So we didn't do a specific study to determine which were going to be proven safety countermeasures. We actually reviewed existing literature. So yeah, recessing pavement markings, that's an excellent way to increase the durability of your markings, but the cost effectiveness of that is going to depend on a lot of conditions, the volume on your roadway, the amount of snow plowing you do, etc. So yeah, that's not really taken into consideration when you look at that benefit cost ratio. We're really, that study is looking more at just the cost to change from a 4-inch line to a 6-inch line and to maintain it at that level. And I also saw another related question further down the list there that was asking if the life cycle was worked into that. And yes, of course, if you use a durable marking, it's going to last longer, but it's a little bit more of an upfront cost. But yeah, that's part of the cost analysis. But recessing the markings, you just have to make that decision for your specific roadway. It can definitely be beneficial. There are studies that have shown in some cases where it has been.
And Kate, one more follow-up on the water edge lines. Does FHWA recommend or have a minimum level of retroreflectivity for edge lines?
Sure. So that will be in the MUTCD when the final rule comes out. Right now, what the MUTCD says in section 3A.02 is that all markings that must be visible at night must be, or shall be, of course, shall be retroreflective. So they all have to be retroreflective unless you have ambient illumination that ensures adequate visibility. So that's what the MUTCD says right now. There's a rulemaking on putting minimum levels of retroreflectivity for pavement markings into the MUTCD. It's been ongoing for a while, and it is still ongoing. So you'll have to watch the Federal Register to find out when that comes out.
Very good, thank you. This next, I have a couple questions for Joe. Joe, how do CPFM and HFST affect, well, HFST specifically, affect pavement quality metrics like IRI and PCI?
I don't think, I'm not sure exactly, are they talking about using that to measure the texture? So that's what I'm assuming. But it would not affect anything in terms of, yeah, you apply the HFST on top of the existing row, it will give you different data. But, you know, it's a surface treatment, just like if you would resurfacing a row. But in our case, it's only going to be at the intersection location or at a short section of the curb and instead of the entire roadway. So I don't think it actually would affect it. And then CPFM itself is a data collection device, it's a measurement. So it doesn't put anything down, so it would not change the texture of the roadway. So again, I don't think that changes the measurement as well for the two methodology that they're talking about.
Thank you. There's a couple questions about HFST as it might affect cycling and bicycle lanes. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, for some of those, I believe, especially you probably see a green colored bike lane. At times, they label that at HFST bike lane, but most of the time they would use a less abrasive aggregate. So, you know, because driving on, you know, riding bicycle on a bike lane doesn't demand a lot of really high friction. So sometimes they did it more for demarcation than anything else. However, because they use a less abrasive aggregate, while it provides much better traction, especially during wet condition, it will minimize the chance of you falling. But however, if you do fall, just like you fall on any pavement, the effect's gonna the same. You're gonna probably skin your knee or whatever. So I don't believe that there's a lot of large impact on the cycling community. We have not heard any feedback from some of these jurisdictions that have used green bike lane and have received a tremendous amount of complaint. Whenever we kind of asked them, they said they have not heard anything about the complaint about the HFSD bike lane. So.
Okay, thank you, Joe. This next question is for Agnieszka. Doesn't the use of variable speed limits presume that motorists will obey speed limits?
Yes, it does. And just with any regular speed limits, with that also has the same implication. But with VSLs, remember that they can be advisory or regulatory depending on your jurisdiction. So that's the added twist with them. So you need to work with your law enforcement before you set up your VSL system, implement VSL to see how you can actually, whether you can enforce the speed limit or not, which can further drive up your compliance.
Very good, thank you. Peter, back to you on RFBs. Did you examine, or has it been examined, raised crosswalks, and where do they fit in with all of this?
Yeah, so raised crosswalks were part of the EDC STEP initiative, and we love them. They do have their place, and you can actually use RFBs with raised crosswalks as well. A lot of these countermeasures, can be used in combination. But raised crosswalks, somebody was asking, would that be a proven safety countermeasure? I don't know, Phil, maybe in the next round or something. But, they did make the EDC STEP initiative, and I'll put, I think in one of the responses that we published, the STEP website has, in addition to the RFB and crosswalk visibility enhancements, some other pedestrian treatments as well. So maybe we can put that link in there.
Okay. And one more while we have you, one more follow-up to that. Is there a significant safety difference between continental striping and continental plus transverse lines, the latter type?
Yeah, so there was a research that there's a report out there with regards to just this issue, and it showed that the continental and bar pair were pretty similar, but they did have much better detection over the transverse, which is just the two parallel lines. And so I can put that a link to that research report in the responses as well. Okay.
And one more, there was RFB was a very popular Q&A topic. So while we have you, someone asked for advanced signing for crosswalks. Their understanding was that advanced signing was not recommended. Could you clarify that, please?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure where they are that, but depending on the sight distance, and it actually says it in the interim approval as well, that it says if deemed necessary by the engineer in event of sight distance, additional RFB may be installed in advance of the crosswalk. Now it says shall supplement, not replace, so that advanced signing with the RFB, if you're going to do that, you do need to have the RFB at the crosswalk as well. So it really draws a lot of attention, but really it's with regards to sight distance. That's the issue.
Thank you. I'll go back to Joe. So I have another HFST question. Should HFST be installed just in the travel lanes, in between edge line and center lines, or for the whole roadway?
No, it depends on your crash data and your geometric. I have seen many installations only cover one directional lane and not the entire lane. So no, they don't need to cover both lanes.
Okay, thank you. Agnieszka, this is a question for you, back to VSLs. Has the use of speed governors ever been given serious thought?
I am assuming, am I frozen?
We hear you okay.
Okay. So I'm assuming the person who asked that question is referring to some sort of intelligent speed adaptation. We are not considering that as part of this PSC because the PSC initiative is mostly focused on, as you can see, all engineering countermeasures. But yes, that is something that's more in the vehicle realm, and it's used a lot in Europe. And I think that definitely has promise.
Okay, thank you. All right, another question back to Peter. Peter's going to sleep well tonight with all these questions.
I'm typing away here too.
All right, he's doing a great job. The question came in, can you talk about putting RFBs and PHBs at intersections and driveways? What are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, so in the past, there was some, in the current MUTCD, actually, let me start there. It says that PHBs should be, or pedestrian hybrid beacons should be at least 100 feet from an intersection. And that's going to get changed in the next MUTCD, most likely because a lot of the research with regards to PHBs showed that that wasn't an issue. The concern was that on the minor road, if it's stop controlled, that drivers are stopping at a stop sign, but on the major road, they've got this PHB or a stop condition. And so there may be some confusion. And so the research showed, though, that that wasn't an issue. So I suspect there hasn't been any research with the RFB in this situation, but I don't think that would be a problem as well. So RFBs and PHBs both can be used at a intersection. Now, I was responding to somebody who had a question with regards to stop control. Once again, just repeating, if you have a stop control on the minor road, but it's not stop controlled on the major road, you can go ahead and put that RFB on that major road crossing.
Very good, thank you. Agnieszka, another one for you. Previous studies on speed limits showed that changes in speed limits had very little effect on actual speeds. Has that changed?
Just a minute.
Sure.
Yes, sorry about that. I think what we would like folks to do is take into account the context of the roadway and not just change the speed limit, but especially in urban core, there definitely is a growing body of literature that says that just changing speed limits does definitely has a benefit, safety benefits. And I think on our proven safety countermeasure for the appropriate speed limit PSC, there is a study that actually backs that up.
Very good, thank you. Phil, I have one for you on and there were a couple of questions related to the number of new PSCs versus existing ones. You mentioned a new name for US Limits 2. Is its new name appropriate speed limits for all road users? Is that different? What's going on there?
Sure. So US Limits 2 was a proven safety countermeasure added in previous iterations. So what we were doing, we took a step back. As I noted, we kind of looked at all the existing countermeasures, and specific to speed limits, we recognized there's a lot of other methods, approaches, considerations of various factors and tools that can be utilized when setting speed limits and making speed limit setting decisions. So that US Limits 2 is no longer a dedicated proven safety countermeasure. However, it is included under this new appropriate speed limits for all road users as a tool that can be used to validate speed limit setting decisions. So yes, while it was one previously, we're replacing it with this newer, broader PSC for setting speed limits and all the different tools and approaches that can be utilized by an agency to set speed limits.
Okay, thank you. Then this next question is for Brooke on road bicycle lanes. The question is, it seems like lane widths and narrowing lanes is often a part of providing room for bike facilities with the added benefit of slowing traffic. Is there updated guidance on when lanes can be greater than 12 feet and when is it not an option for roadways at 55 miles per hour and under?
What I would say is this, is that, we have experience and an understanding using our highway capacity analyses and our safety analyses that tell us that reducing the lane by a foot, maybe even 2 foot, will not have a significant impact on the motor vehicle travel while we are getting a safety benefit from providing those bike lanes. That applies to all users of the roadway, not just the bicyclists. That's where these CMFs that we've highlighted today are applicable. I would also add that if we're talking about speeds up to 55 miles an hour, these CMFs that we've mentioned, they're applicable to local roads and collectors in an urban area. And I would expect that we would have much lower speeds on those corridors. And if we don't, that might be something that we need to be rethinking. Certainly adding a bike lane next to motor vehicle traffic on those higher speed roadways. You know, if you're getting above 35 miles per hour, it's not going to be comfortable for your bicyclists. You're likely only going to have your highly confident bicyclists using those corridors. And I would refer you to the bikeway selection guide. It has some really good guidance on the appropriate type of bicycle facility for a given context, so that if you are building these facilities, you're building them in such a way that they're going to serve the greatest portion of your population that would be interested in bicycle travel.
Thank you, Brooke. I have a follow-up, one more for you. The question is, are we treating e-bikes, electronic bikes, as regular bikes, and how do they fit into all of this?
That's a very good question. It's certainly been one of those emerging topics across the country, and every agency is sort of addressing it in their own way. One thing I would refer you to is the Pedestrian Bicycle Information Center. There's a website for that if you just type pedbikeinfo.org. We have a page that talks about micromobility modes and what's happening in different places across the country. Right now, we don't have standardized data collection on these different modes. Like, we don't necessarily distinguish between an e-bike and a regular bike. And we don't necessarily have data on things like scooters or other things that are out there now. So it's hard for us to capture some of that unless someone is doing direct observational studies in an area where you have a lot of that activity. So my own gut feeling is that e-bike speeds, scooter speeds are generally going to be consistent with what's happening in a bicycle lane, and I think that's a reasonable place for them to be. But you might also, there are some products out there that are allowing users to travel at much higher speeds. And so in that case, maybe some local municipal ordinances are appropriate. I know some agencies have put some different restrictions in different areas on what type of e-bike you're allowed to use in those facilities.
Thank you. This next question goes to Joe on lighting. Does the lighting PSC include recommendations on spectrum for, say, cities that are dark sky cities and other considerations, the controllability of these lights?
We're in the process of putting together an update of the FHWA Rolling Lighting Handbook, so it should be available probably early next year. It does include write-up on taking into account spectrum when you design lighting. And one of the beauty about LED is you can target the lighting and provide, including on the luminaire shield, so that you can target the light where you want it to go, maybe on the roadway or on the sidewalk, and not and minimize the spillage or the so-called bug rating that allow upward light to go and impact the dark sky. Yeah, the lighting community is fully aware of that, and they're putting in a very huge effort to try to minimize any impact that would change the the dark sky and all that. So we, in the new handbook, there will be a little bit of write-up including that to make sure that lighting designer will take that into account.
Thank you, Joe. Phil, we had a couple of questions for you on the website itself. People asking, do you know roughly when the filter tool might be available? There's a lot of interest in that filter tool.
Sure, we recognize that. I think I mentioned as we got into those web page updates, it's not currently shown or enabled on our web pages at this time. And kind of the rush to meet the rollout or timeline to get this initiative kind of rolled out officially. We did have to make some last minute adjustments, and that included just getting the countermeasure specific pages uploaded to our public facing Proven Safety Countermeasure web pages. We are hopeful within the next few weeks that the search tool and the filter tool will be added. Now they will show up just directly on the Proven Safety Countermeasures homepage. So towards the top, just like my screenshot showed, that's from our test site. It should mimic very similarly what that search toolbox will look like, and it'll appear towards the top of that home page before you get into the categories or groupings of the countermeasures, but not currently shown on our web pages. We understand that, and just encourage you to keep an eye on our web pages for when that does go live.
Great, thank you. Joe, a CFM question for you. Is this limited to a surface coating or increased gravel size of asphalt?
I'm sorry, I lost part of your question. Can you repeat that?
Sure thing. With CPFM, is it limited to a certain surface coating or increased gravel size of asphalt?
Well, no. However, in terms of, CPFM is a methodology using a particular type of device to collect the data. However, there are contact points occasionally when the wheel is kind of dragged across the pavement. So it's independent of the gravel, the aggregate size, but it will not work with loose gravel because then it would just give inaccurate readings.
Very good, thank you. And Peter's had enough of a rest, so we're going to go back to Peter. Peter, are there any specific crosswalk visibility enhancements or use of RFBs for trail crossings?
Yeah, actually both the RFB and crosswalk visibility enhancements, these can be used at trail crossings in addition to the step countermeasures. And so, yeah, we're just pulling these two particular ones out at this time. But if you go to the STEP website or Federal Highways Pedestrian Safety website as well, we do have a lot of great tools for trail crossings.
Okay, very good. Let's see here. Peter, while we have you, is there a CRF for curb extensions only?
Oh yes. So actually, that is right now. Hopefully, we'll get that shortly, but that is under research right now, and hopefully the results will come out shortly. But that is, curb extensions are trying to develop those crash reduction factors right now.
Okay, thank you. Joe, going back to you, high friction surface treatment. Would you recommend high friction surface treatment for bridge spans or tunnels?
No, I would not recommend bridge span because a lot of agencies have used that, but they use it to seal the bridge deck, which you really don't need HFST for that. However, if the bridge is on a curve and you're experiencing a lot of wet crashes, run up the road type, then yeah, you can treat that with HFST. For tunnel, I would limit it to the approach into the tunnel because that's the time where because of the change in the lighting inside the tunnel versus outside, a lot of vehicle will start to brake. So you want to make sure that there's adequate friction provided. However, once you're inside the tunnel, unless again your lane is narrow and you want them to really stay in the lane, then yeah, you put in HFST. Otherwise, it's not needed.
Okay, thank you. Brooke, another question for you. Is there a study for the difference between protected bicycle lanes versus non-protected?
Well, as I mentioned, we are doing research right now to study separated bike lanes. That's the terminology we're using to refer to protected bike lanes. And what we mean by a separated bike lane is something that has a buffer and a vertical element, like a delineator post or a raised island or something of that nature, separating the bicyclist from motor vehicle travel. So that research is ongoing now. We anticipate that we will have that available in the next year.
Very good. And a follow-up on the same topic. Are the CMS for bicycle lanes only built upon pedestrian and bicycle exposure?
Well, the CMFs that we highlighted today, those are for the safety of all road users and the crashes related to all road users. It's not specific to bicyclists or pedestrians or anybody else. Part of the reason for that is we have a lot more data when we're looking at all road users. If we're looking just at bicycle travel, sometimes it's hard to get enough statistically significant data that we can make some observations on those trends. And so if you're looking at the crash modification factor clearinghouse, you'll often see that when you're looking at crash modification factors that are specific to bicycle travel, the ratings are not as high as they are if you're looking at the crash reduction for all modes of travel. That being said, you know, that the crash modification factors are showing us that there is a safety benefit for everybody, not just for the bicyclist, which I think is good news. It's not just a bicycle specific piece of infrastructure.
Very good, thank you. Peter, I had another question for you. Let me, here it is. Oh, sorry, that was a wrong question. Excuse me a second. Let me find that one. I had another question that was related to. Here we go. Will the RFBs be an acceptable solution at multi-lane roundabout crossings?
Yes, would they do? I think the question when I read it originally was, I think there's some concerns about multi-lane and the access board, the ProWag. And my understanding, and maybe Brooke can jump in here as well, but my understanding is that on multi-lanes, because of the multi-threat situation, you need to enhance those. And the RFB is one of those devices that can be done. The PHB is another, raised crosswalks, and or a signal. Are those the four that I currently understand that are allowable for those? So, but currently I do know of RFBs that are at roundabouts, multi-lane roundabouts.
Let me jump in to further clarify. I understand where the concern is, because the currently available draft version of the ProWag says that you have to have signals for multi-lane approaches to channelized turn lanes and roundabouts. However, I'm anticipating we might see something different when the finalized version of the ProWag comes out. We do have research that shows us various design treatments that can be used at those, including our RFBs, and that's NCHRP report 834. So I would refer you to that. Now, it may be that because of your local state laws, policies, standards, that you might be told that you can't use those in those contexts. So there might be some local reasons that you're having to do that. But if it's simply because it's what's in the draft ProWag, I would question further and feel free to engage with FHWA's ADA working group. I'm a member of that working group, as well as Elizabeth Hilton in the Office of Infrastructure, Melissa Anderson in the Office of Civil Rights. I'm trying to think. And then Jeff Shaw, he's been in the Office of Safety, he's been heavily involved with this issue as well. So we can provide further clarification if you need to have some additional discussions about this topic.
Very good, thank you. Joe, another HFST question. Typically, the HFST countermeasure is implemented as part of a resurfacing project. Spots like intersections or intersection approaches, ramps, are more likely to be a spot location. What's the general practice for implementation in this kind of situation?
Yeah, let me say that you are much better off whether you do it for curves or intersection or pet crossing, that you bundle them up together and not include it as part of the resurfacing contract. You get much better pricing on it, and then you also can have better attention because you can get better contract to actually do the work. When you have resurfacing, most likely they will add on to the overhead for the general contracting, so you end up getting very high pricing even for those curve sections. So unless your location is spread out like 3 or 4 hours from each other, I would recommend that you bundle them together and bid them the same time.
Okay. let's see, let me slide down here. There are lots and lots of good questions. Let me try finding one that hasn't been answered yet. Let's see. Oh, Phil, there were a couple, again, general questions on PDHs or certificates for this class, and also the recording of this. So what are we doing as far as that goes, but also where can they be able to find the recording of this after we're all done?
So take the easy question first. The recording will be posted along with the transcript to the Proven Safety Countermeasures webpage. Again, on that homepage, in the box that currently has the overview flyer, booklet, and guidance memos, it'd be posted right in there. As far as PDHs go, we are not offering PDHs. However, I know that various licensing boards, depending on your state, may honor proof of registration or have other requirements that don't necessarily require a PDH certificate to be honored for those credits. So that's something we can look into further. I know it's come up in other webinars. So again, we're not offering them, but yeah, it's just going to vary from state to state and agency to agency. So.
Very good, thank you. Joe, another one for you. Where can people find guidance for intersection lighting?
You're muted, Joe. Joe, you're muted.
Sorry about that. The three go-to guide that people can refer to, one of them is the IES or Illuminating Engineering Society, their RP 818 design guide, or the tech guide, which is Transportation Association of Canada. They also should have that, and also the ESTO lighting guide, 7th edition. Between those three, that should cover the intersection design for lighting.
Okay. Thank you. Another resource question for Agnieszka. Is there a reference for a practitioner to determine if state and local laws allow camera speed limit enforcement in the jurisdiction?
You would have to check with your state law. Start with your MVL. It has to be allowed specifically. It has to call that out. ASC, automated speed enforcement, speed safety cameras have to be allowed for your jurisdiction before you can go ahead and start working towards implementation. And I believe that the question was specifically for Florida.
Correct. Okay, let me see. Sliding through. Peter, back to you. Our RFBs are the RFBs shown in the presentation are shown with black poles. Does FHWA recommend using black poles to get the crash reduction benefit, or what's the difference?
Yeah, so I was when I read that at first, I was thinking, are they talking about regular poles and not with the retroreflective striping down? But I'm not sure, and maybe some others on the team here can address that with regard to black poles specifically. But I do know that with retroreflective striping down the pole, that draws more attention to it, and that's recommended. But as far as just black poles, anyone else have a thought on that?
Peter, I'll just jump in. I would be surprised if we found that our research on RFBs took into account anything to do with the color or type of pole. I would expect that you might have the, galvanized pole, or, whatever it is you're currently using for your luminars. I think it could be any sort of pole. But like Peter said, you can use it's one of our safety countermeasures to have retroreflective striping on sign poles, and that would be something that you could apply here. But I don't even know that that's in particular has been addressed as part of your crash modification factors for the rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
Thank you. And kind of a follow-up question with Brooke and also maybe and Kate, there's a kind of a hybrid question about water edge lines and bicycle lanes. Would there ever be a scenario in which both wider edge lines and bicycle lanes would coexist?
Would you like me to take that, Kate?
Well, let me just start off with, so we find that the wider edge lines are most effective, at least the research is showing us rural areas. So as far as whether there would ever be one, sure. I'm sure there probably are already, because wider edge lines are used everywhere already in some states. So yeah, and I think the question was whether it would go between the, on the edge of which side of the bike lane, right? So I think between the vehicle and the bike would make the most sense, but go ahead and Brooke and add to that.
Well, I'll just add, usually when we're defining lane widths, we don't subtract out the width of our striping when we do that. So, I would assume that you're centering your pavement markings right on what you would define as the edge of your lane. So with that, I don't know that you're not necessarily reducing your motor vehicle lane or your bicycle lane. Motor vehicles are not going to be, and this is my conjecture, motor vehicles are not going to be hugely influenced by a few inches of striping in terms of making them crowd one way or the other. However, a bicyclist who might be traveling in a bike lane where they have parking on their right and motor vehicle lanes on the left, they might be crowding that edge line. And if you've got a narrower bicycle lane and you have a narrow parking lane, that few inches might make a difference, and it might encourage bicyclists to crowd the parked cars a little bit more, where they'd be at a greater risk for dooring type crashes, which can be a very severe type of crash where a motorist opens their car door and the bicyclist hits that open car door. So that might be something to keep an eye on, but I don't think we have any research that tells us anything substantive. On the other side, I think having more emphatic striping maybe heightens the conspicuity of the fact that you have a bike lane there. So there may be some trade-offs.
Right, and so as you mentioned, if we are putting the stripe on the effective, where we think it is, and we're basically splitting that stripe. So going from a 4-inch stripe to a 6-inch stripe, if one of the extra inches goes in the motorist lane and one in the bike lane, probably not a big deal. But we do, every once in a while, the NewPSCs recommends or requires wide lines, which are twice as wide as your regular line. So that's getting into more like 8 inches, or couldn't even get wider than that if you're currently using 6-inch as your standard. So there, maybe it's more of an issue where we have much wider lines. But I just don't see, we don't have research on it, but I don't see that we're going to see a difference with 1 inch.
Okay.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, it's a great idea to be cognizant of that, because if somebody's striping it all on one side, then maybe it does make a bigger difference.
Okay, we have time for one last question, and then Phil's going to close it off. Again, I thank everybody for all your really great questions, and we're going to do our best to answer every single one of them. We have more than 100, almost 200 questions total so far. Okay, the last question is for Agnieszka. Can setting speed limits too low for a function or environment create other road problems, and how does that play into VSLs?
Kevin, you might want to read that question. I think it was not for VSLs. It was just for regular speed limits. And I think the key here is the context. What we are trying to do with our set appropriate speed limit PSC is to try to make you aware of all these other factors that you need to take into account. Look at the roadway context, look at your vulnerable road user population, use expert systems, and then set the speed limit. And where a lower speed limit is recommended is actually in the urban core areas. That's where we are recommending the 20 mile per hour, 25 mile per hour speed limit, is because a lot of these factors come together in the urban core. So we have taken into account all of those factors and set yours accordingly.
Correct. And thank you. Yes, that was for the appropriate speed limits, not for VSLs. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back over to Phil to bring this to a close. And again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. And yes, thank you, everyone. A lot of good discussion in the Q&A session there. We understand there's a lot of questions that have not been answered. We'll do our best to follow up directly with those if a question was not answered. I know a number of them were submitted anonymously, so it might be a challenge for us to respond directly to the person. But if you do have a question, if you did submit that anonymously, please reach out to us. Our contact information is should be up on your screens now for myself and also all the SMEs that presented on the various new countermeasures here today. So we will do our best to follow up accordingly. But again, if you submitted that question anonymously, please reach out to us directly with that question. So that does bring us to the end of our session. Please reach out to us if there's anything we can do to help. With that, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, our leadership for providing some remarks, everyone that has contributed to the project along the way. I'd also like to thank all of our support staff, our contractor team, and all of you for participating in the session today. As a reminder, the recorded session and transcript will be posted to the Proven Safety Countermeasure homepage. And also keep an eye out for that added functionality. Hopefully by the time that webinar recording is available, we'll have that additional functionality enabled on the web pages. So we'll leave this page or this screen open here, but officially we'll conclude the audio and thank everyone for their attendance today. We look forward to rolling this out and working with all of you to advance the implementation of the PSCs. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Thank you.